I worked the night shift in a downtown high-rise, one of those corporate fortresses where the hallways all look the same, and the glow of fluorescent lights gives everything a sickly yellow tint. The kind of place where people spend their entire lives in cubicles, working until they're nothing but a name on a file. I don't mind the solitude. Hell, I prefer it. No boss breathing down my neck, no co-workers forcing small talk. Just me, my mop, and the endless rows of office furniture. The whole building becomes mine after midnight. That night started like any other. I clocked in at 11:58 p.m., tossed my backpack into my locker and grabbed my checklist. Vacuum the break room, wipe down the glass doors, make sure the emergency exit alarms are working, the usual. I was halfway through refilling the mop bucket when my radio crackled. "Hey, maintenance? You there?" It was Ron, the security guy. I pressed the button. "Yeah, what's up?" "Got a flickering light on the 14th floor by the East Wing hallway. Can you check it out?" I sighed. "Copy that." Ron chuckled. "Don't sound too excited, buddy." I forced a laugh. "Oh yeah, the thrill of changing light bulbs, the stuff of legends." I set the mop aside, grabbed my tool belt and headed for the elevator. The building was quiet, the kind of deep quiet that makes your ears ring. The only sounds were my footsteps and the hum of the vending machines in the break room. I pressed 14 on the panel, and the elevator lurched upward. Something felt off, a strange tightness in the air, like the whole building was holding its breath. When the doors opened, I stepped into the hallway and froze. The East Wing was exactly as I remembered. Rows of cubicles, a break room at the end, and the flickering light Ron had mentioned. But there was something new. A door I had never seen before. It was an old industrial thing, thick, metallic, covered in faded maintenance access stenciling. The kind of door that should have led to electrical panels or a storage closet. Only I'd worked here for a year, and I knew every inch of this place. This door? It wasn't supposed to be here. I walked up to it, pressing my palm against the cold metal. The handle was rusty. That didn't make sense. This building was practically spotless. A gust of air came from underneath, carrying a smell of mildew and old paper. I hesitated. Then, against every survival instinct in my body, I opened it. The air inside was stale, heavy, like an attic that hadn't been opened in decades. I stepped forward, my boots scuffing against peeling yellow wallpaper. It looked ancient, curling at the edges like it had been soaking in damp air for years. The buzzing overhead was different too, louder, deeper, like the lights weren't just faulty but alive. I turned back. The door was gone. My stomach dropped. My breath came in short gasps. I ran to where the door had been, pressing my hands against the wall, pounding against it. Solid, no seams, no knob. Nothing. A slow, suffocating panic crawled up my throat. I turned around. The hallway stretched endlessly in both directions. I walked. I don't know how long. It felt like hours. The air grew thicker with every step, pressing against my chest, slowing my movements. The buzzing lights cast shifting shadows along the walls. Then I saw it. A desk, sitting against the wall, covered in a thin layer of dust. Something about it made my skin crawl. It looked deliberate, like someone had placed it there for me. On top was a stack of papers. I picked one up. Date October 9th, 1987. Employee, my name, task completed, hallway maintenance, Sector 4. I swallowed hard. That was my name. The handwriting looked exactly like mine. The signature at the bottom, the way I looped my R, mine. But I wasn't born in 1987. The lights flickered violently. A dripping sound echoed from down the hall. Slow, rhythmic. Then, footsteps. I turned and for the first time I saw it. A figure stood at the edge of the dim light. It was tall, but hunched, its arms too long for its frame. Its face was wrong, not quite human, not quite anything at all. Just an impression of a face, like it was mimicking one, but hadn't quite figured out how. Then it spoke, not aloud, inside my head. "You've been here before." I shook my head violently. No, I haven't. It took a step closer. You never left. The words weren't just sound. They were a feeling, a weight pressing against my skull, sinking into my thoughts. Something wet dripped from its fingertips. Then the lights went out. I ran, blindly, hands outstretched, slamming into unseen walls. The buzzing sound grew into a violent, shrieking whine. I felt something brush my back, long, bony fingers, too cold to be human. Then, a door. I grabbed the handle and threw myself through it and stumbled into the break room. The lights were blinding. The hum of the vending machines and the ticking wall clock felt alien after what I had just experienced. I gasped, my chest heaving. Then I noticed something. The paint was faded. The chairs were different. The vending machine had logos I didn't recognize. I turned slowly to the calendar on the wall. October 9th, 1987. The intercom crackled overhead. Employee my name, report to maintenance. Hallway sector 4 needs repairs. The voice was mine. My blood went cold. I turned toward the hallway, and there at the far end, I saw myself. An exact copy of me standing in the shadows, watching. It smiled. The lights flickered, and then everything went dark. I woke up in my locker room. My hands were shaking. My uniform was covered in dust. I stumbled to my feet. The time card on the wall read October 9th, 2024. Exactly 37 years later. I was back, but I knew I'd never really left. I took the job at Ridgeway Mall because I needed the money. It wasn't glamorous, just an overnight security gig, making sure teenagers didn't sneak in after hours, checking that all the stores were locked up, and reporting anything suspicious. At first, it was easy money. The hardest part was staying awake. But then came the night that everything changed. It was 2:17 a.m. when I first noticed something was wrong. The mall was supposed to be empty. I had done my rounds, checked the stores, and all the gates were locked. The food court chairs were stacked neatly, and the only sounds were the faint hum of the ventilation system and the occasional crackle of my radio. But as I was making my way past the east wing, I saw something that shouldn't have been there. A mannequin, standing in the middle of the hallway. I stopped, my breath catching in my throat. The stores were all locked. The displays hadn't changed when I'd walked through here an hour ago. But somehow, this mannequin was just there, facing me, head tilted slightly to the side. I swallowed hard and stepped closer. The mannequin was dressed in a plain grey suit, its plastic hands hanging limply at its sides. Its face was featureless except for two faint impressions where eyes should have been. Something about it felt wrong. The air around it was stale, like a room that hadn't been aired out in years. I reached for my radio. Hey Ron, you still up? A moment of static. Then, yeah, what's up? Did anyone come through here earlier? Cleaning crew or something? Negative. Place is empty. Why? I hesitated. There's a mannequin in the hallway. I don't remember seeing it before. Silence. Then, you sure? I frowned. Yeah, pretty damn sure. Could be a prank. Maybe some kids snuck in earlier. I didn't think so. There were no unlocked doors. No way for anyone to sneak in. But I didn't argue. Instead, I grabbed the mannequin by the shoulders and dragged it toward one of the storefronts. It was lighter than I expected, like it was hollow. I set it down near the entrance to an empty shoe store and turned back toward my post. That's when I heard the footsteps. Soft, barely there, coming from behind me. I turned sharply. The mannequin was gone. I don't scare easily, but at that moment I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a kid. That raw, animal kind of fear that makes your hands shake and your stomach drop. I scanned the hallway, my flashlight sweeping across the tiled floor. Nothing. The whole mall felt different, bigger, wider. Like the ceiling had stretched higher, the hallways had elongated, the shadows grown deeper. I took a step back and heard a soft scuffling sound behind me. I spun around, my flashlight shaking. There it was, the mannequin, standing 10 feet closer than before. My lungs squeezed tight. It hadn't made a sound when I had dragged it earlier, but now it had moved on its own. I took a slow step backward, then another. The air felt thicker, like I was moving through something unseen. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until my radio crackled. "Hey man, you good?" I exhaled sharply, pressing the button. "Ron, I don't. Something is..." The radio cut out. Not static, not interference, just silence. And then the mall lights went out. I stood frozen in the pitch-black corridor. My flashlight was the only thing cutting through the dark. The humming of the mall's ventilation system had stopped. The security monitors in the office must have shut down too, because my radio remained eerily silent. That's when I heard it. A whisper. It came from the speakers overhead. Soft, unintelligible, like a voice stretched thin over static. It wasn't an announcement, it wasn't music. It was something else. A message I wasn't meant to hear. I turned toward the exit doors at the far end of the hall, the ones leading to the parking lot. I was going to leave. Forget this job. Forget the paycheck. But when I reached the doors, they were gone. Not locked. Not barricaded. Gone. The glass, the metal frame, everything had been replaced by more hallway, more stores, more endless twisting corridors that shouldn't have been there. I stepped back, my mind racing. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. I turned to the nearest store, Harrington's Fine Jewelry. I'd passed it 100 times. The gate was still locked, the display cases filled with watches and necklaces. I banged on the metal gate. "Hello?" My voice felt small, swallowed. Then, from deep inside the dark store, something moved, a figure, tall, bent at an unnatural angle, shifting just outside the reach of my flashlight. And then, the mannequin stepped forward. I ran. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I just ran, my boots pounding against the tiles. The hallway stretched longer with every step, warping, shifting, the stores becoming distorted versions of themselves. Clothing racks turned to twisted skeletal frames. Store signs flickered with nonsense symbols, and the mannequins, they were everywhere now. Lined up against the walls, posed like people frozen mid-conversation, their faceless heads tilted toward me. I sprinted past them, refusing to look, refusing to stop. Then, a hand grabbed my wrist. I screamed, twisting, swinging my flashlight wildly. But there was nothing there. Just the cold, empty air. The whispering from the overhead speakers grew louder, more urgent. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to have seen this. Then, at the far end of the corridor, I saw the exit. A single red door standing where nothing should have been. I ran. My breath came in ragged gasps. The mannequins began to move. Slow at first, then faster. Their limbs twitching unnaturally, their bodies jerking toward me in sharp, puppet-like movements. I threw myself at the door, fingers fumbling for the handle, and the moment my hand touched it, the whispering stopped. I wrenched it open and fell through. I hit the cold tile floor of the security office. The lights were back. The monitors hummed. My radio crackled. "Hey man, you good?" Ron's voice. I sat up, my whole body trembling. I was back. But when I looked at the monitors, the mall was empty. No mannequins, no red door, just the same lifeless corridors I had walked 1,000 times. I checked my watch. 1 minute had passed. I quit the next morning. The mall never felt the same after that. But sometimes late at night, when I drive past Ridgeway Mall, I swear I see something moving behind the glass, watching, waiting for me to come back. I've lived in the same apartment building for almost 4 years. It's not much, just a cheap one-bedroom in an old complex with thin walls and flickering hallway lights. The kind of place where you hear your neighbors arguing through the vents and the smell of someone's dinner lingers in the air long after they've eaten. But it's home. At least, it was. My next-door neighbor, Mr. Solomon, had lived in apartment 206 for as long as I could remember. He was a quiet old man, the kind who nodded politely when you passed in the hall but never really talked. Then one day he disappeared. I didn't think much of it at first. People moved out all the time. But a few weeks later, I noticed something strange. His apartment door was still there, still numbered 206, but it was slightly ajar. The thing is, I knew for a fact that he had moved out. The landlord even told me they were planning to repaint and put in a new tenant soon, but for some reason, no one ever came. And yet, the door stayed open. Just a few inches, barely noticeable. But the longer I stared at it, the more I felt like it was waiting for me. I should have ignored it. I should have walked away, but I didn't. It was late when I finally gave in to curiosity. The hallway was dead silent, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're the only person left in the building. I stepped up to 206, pressing my palm lightly against the wood. "Hello?" I called, my voice barely above a whisper. No response. The air smelled stale, like dust and something faintly metallic. I pushed the door open wider. The apartment was dark, but enough light spilled in from the hallway to illuminate the entryway. Everything looked untouched. The same ugly green carpet, the same off-white walls, the same furniture Solomon had always kept, even though he was gone. I stepped inside. Something about the silence felt wrong. It wasn't just quiet, it was too quiet. No street noise from the open window, no hum from the old refrigerator. It was like the entire apartment had been vacuum sealed from time itself. Then something caught my eye. Down the short hallway, the door to Solomon's bedroom was open. I swear to God I saw movement inside. A flicker of shadow just barely visible in the dim light. I froze. My skin prickled with something primal, something that told me I had just made a huge mistake. I stepped backward, ready to leave. Then the bedroom light flicked on, and I saw the pictures. Solomon's walls were covered in photographs, hundreds of them arranged in neat, obsessive rows, and every single one of them was of the same thing: doors, apartment doors, house doors, rusted metal doors, giant wooden doors with iron knockers. Some were open, revealing nothing but blackness inside. Others had people standing in front of them, but their faces were blurred, smudged like someone had pressed their thumb across the film. Then I saw my door. A photograph of apartment 207, my apartment, was pinned in the center of the wall, and right in front of it stood a figure. It was blurred, like the others, but I could make out its shape. It was tall, thin, and standing unnaturally still. It looked like it was waiting. A sharp, creaking sound made me whip around. The door to 206 had closed behind me, and the lights in the apartment flickered off. I don't remember running. I don't remember throwing myself against the door, yanking it open, and sprinting down the hallway like my life depended on it. But suddenly, I was in my apartment, my back pressed against my own door, breathing so hard I thought my lungs might collapse. I locked the deadbolt, then the chain. Then I shoved the couch in front of the door for good measure. And still, I didn't feel safe. Because when I turned to face my living room, something had changed. There was a photograph taped to the wall right beside my TV. It hadn't been there before. I stepped closer, my fingers shaking as I reached for it. It was a picture of my front door, and standing in front of it was me. Not just any version of me. Me, right now. In my pajamas, with the same terrified expression I knew was frozen on my face, I dropped the photo like it had burned me. Then, a knock at the door. Soft, slow. I backed away. Another knock. And then, "You left the door open." A whisper. A voice that was mine, but not. It came from the other side of the door. I felt cold air against my ankles, like the door had been cracked open, except I knew it was still locked. The knocks grew louder, then pounding, The walls shook. The lights flickered. I pressed my hands over my ears. Go away, go away, go away. And then silence. I didn't move for a long time. Finally, after what felt like hours, I pulled the couch away, just far enough to look through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No one there. But something was different. The door to 2-6 was gone. Not closed, not sealed, gone. Just a blank stretch of wall where it had once been, like it had never existed. That was 2 weeks ago. I haven't slept since. Every night I hear something in the hallway. Soft footsteps, the faint creak of floorboards, and sometimes the sound of a door opening. I know eventually I'll have to open my door. And when I do, I know what will be waiting on the other side. Thank you for watching this video by Sanctum Obscura. If you enjoyed unraveling the darkness with us, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stay curious, stay brave, and remember, some mysteries are better left in the shadows. See you next time.